Our Meet the Candidate night is going to be kicked off, no pressure, Dan, for our current Supreme Court Justice and running for re-election, Dan Hawkins.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Strongsville. So great to be back here. My name is Dan Hawkins, and let me just tell you, I've been all over the state of Ohio campaigning really for about 4 years now. It's a big state. In every single county, every single city, I've come in contact with just hundreds upon hundreds of Republican clubs, women's groups, Republican women's groups and organizations. I'm not just saying this. Shannon and Strongsville GOP, there's nothing like it in the state of Ohio. So give Shannon and yourselves a round of applause. How fired up and organized you are for a Monday night in January where, election is so far away, to be out here and learning about these candidates, it's very impressive. So thank you for being here this evening. Now, as Shannon said, my name is Dan Hawkins. I'm your newest Ohio Supreme Court Justice. I was elected in 2024 to an unexpired term, which means I'm running again this year in 26 to secure a full 6-year term. And as Shannon also pointed out, we've recognized over the past few years just how important judges are, right? I mean, judicial races tend to be one of those races that we don't really pay attention to. Obviously, the presidential race, governor race, senator races, those are the sexy races everyone pays attention to. But it's when a judge imposes an injunction that freezes a policy for the entire state, or in President Trump's situation, the entire country. A single judge has that power to do that. So we need to make sure we pay attention to our judges and our judicial candidates. So I'll tell you a little bit more about my background. Again, I was elected 2024 to the Ohio Supreme Court. It's the biggest honor, and a big reason I'm there today is because of the folks like you. Because let me tell you something, in 2024, it was just a turning point, a huge turning point in the state of Ohio. We had this 4-3 conservative Republican majority on the court, and we saw this just unprecedented amount of outside special interest group funding pouring in from out of state to our Democrat opponents. At one point during the 2024 election, my Democrat opponent, we looked at her finance report, and 74%, that's 74% of her donations came from outside the state of Ohio. I mean, think about that. And the reason why does that happen, was Shannon touched on it. There are groups out there, a group specifically led by Eric Holder, President Obama's former Attorney General, whose number one goal, their stated purpose, is go around state to state to tackle redistricting efforts and take over state Supreme Courts. They did it in Wisconsin last year, Pennsylvania 2 years ago. They tried to do it in Ohio in 2024. We fought them back. And they're going to, Eric Holder just announced in an article a couple months back that Ohio was on their target list again. So we need to make sure we fight back that outside spending once again so that people know that Ohio is a Republican state, Ohio is a conservative state, and we expect judges and justices who are going to rule like conservatives, such as the Scalias and the Thomases, who are going to interpret the Constitution as written, who aren't going to legislate from the bench, because that's what conservative jurisprudence is all about. So I come from Central Ohio. I was born and raised in Central Ohio, come from a typical middle-class, working-class background. My father served in the Vietnam War, came home, got a job with the old Ohio Bell before he got his CDL and drove school buses for Columbus Public Schools until he passed away of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. Worked all the way till the day he died. I worked my way through college and law school, attended Ohio State, and that's right, OH. Attended The Ohio State University. Fun fact, I'm 7 justices on the Ohio Supreme Court. I'm the only sitting justice who is an Ohio State grad. I'm trying to amend the Constitution to make it mandatory that at least one justice is an Ohio State grad. But I'm there now, so no worries. But I worked my way through law school, and right after law school, I didn't go to a big law firm or anything like that. Public service has always been in my family, so I got a job at the local prosecutor's office, the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, and there I quickly excelled, where I ended up heading up the Special Victims Unit in the office. So for 13 years I was in that office, 10 I was director of the Special Victims Unit, like the television show, right? But these were the worst of the worst cases. We're talking homicides, serial rapists, human trafficking, child abuse, and internet child exploitation cases. Really the worst of the worst offenders. I was proud. One of my most successful cases I had at the time, I secured a sentence that was the longest recorded sentence in the history of Franklin County, a child sex offender got a sentence of 365 years to life. A little less than I asked for, but it was still at the time a record in Franklin County, and so that guy's still sitting in prison today. But really the worst of the worst cases, but I was a young guy handling these big cases, and eventually I got the opportunity to become a municipal court judge in Franklin County, and then elected in 2018 to the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas, which handles all the trial courts, right? Criminal trials. There was a decision, and this is what really impacted, I think you all remember this, a few years back when I was a trial court judge, where then the Ohio Supreme Court, led by then Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, issued a decision called State versus DuBose. And you guys might remember this. This is a decision where a 4-3 progressive liberal majority of the court at the time ordered that trial court judges could not consider public safety when setting bail amounts for criminal defendants. And that drove everybody crazy. I was a trial court judge. We set bonds. I think there's some judges in the courtroom and judicial camps. We set bonds all the time. Of course you consider public safety. Well, the Ohio Supreme Court, out of nowhere, these 4 justices, said, nope, you can't consider public safety. You basically have to ask the murderer, the rapist, the child abuser, how much can you afford to get out of jail? And that's the amount we set. That was insane. So what did we do as a party, as Ohioans? We formed a group where we toured the state. I was part of a group that helped tour the state. State issue 1 at the time, that mandated a constitutional amendment that changed the Constitution that now says that public safety shall be considered when judges set bond in cases, which is a great victory. I mean, it passed 90%. I mean, it was overwhelming victory that year that passed. It was a great victory for Ohio, but it was also a lesson that we shouldn't have to run and amend the Constitution every time 4 justices decide they want to change the law on a whim. Okay, we can't afford to do that. It costs millions of dollars to put that on the ballot, and we can't do that every time we get bad decisions from judges who don't want to follow the Constitution that it's written, follow the laws it's written, who instead want to impose their own personal policy preferences on Ohioans, because that's not what we believe in. You know, there are decisions I have to make as a justice and as a judge that sometimes I don't like, they're unpopular, but it's what the law says. And I have to tell my folks, tell friends that, look, I don't like the decision I made, but that's what that's what the statute says. That's what the Constitution says. You need to talk to the legislature about changing the law, or we need to change the Constitution to get it right. But it's not my job as a judge or a justice to just change it because I don't like it. That's what we believe. That's important for our system of separation of powers. So going into 2026, again, as Shannon said, there are 2 seats up this year. My seat, I'm up for re-election. I don't have a primary opponent, but I do have a Democrat opponent already lined up. Democrat judge out of Cincinnati. She ran for Supreme Court a couple years ago, so she's got some statewide name recognition. And their goal, again, is to try to take over the Ohio Supreme Court. Now, that's my seat. There's also another seat, Justice Jennifer Bruner. She's the last remaining Democrat on the court. And we have some judges, as Shannon said, 3 or 4 Republican judges running for a primary to take her on. You'll hear from Judge Andrew King here in a little bit. He's one of the candidates looking to take on Justice Jennifer Bruner. But this race is important because we currently have a 6-1 Republican majority on the court. But in 2 years, we have 3 seats open. Justice Pat Fisher, Justice Pat DeWine, and our Chief Justice Sharon Kennedy are all up for re-election. Well, Justice Pat Fisher can't run again. So that's an open seat right there because of age limitations. So that's another one the Democrats are going to come after. Chief Justice Sharon Kennedy can run for re-election, but that's her last time she could run for re-election because of age restrictions. And then the election after that in 2030, Justice Joe Dieters can't run for re-election. So there are a lot of open seats coming up in the Ohio Supreme Court. So we need to make sure we win every single one of these seats so that they can't chip away and win at these things. I'm proud to say I'm actually, a couple weeks away from turning 50 years old. I'm the youngest person at court. So we have an opportunity, if I'm elected this year, I could serve up to 4 terms, 20 years on that Ohio Supreme Court. And I think we've got a great opportunity to get some new, fresh, young blood on that court, young conservatives such as myself who can serve on that court for many years to come to provide long-term stability for public safety, for our business community, so we can make sure that your children, my grandchildren someday can live in an Ohio that I grew up in, which is an Ohio that's safe and free and prosperous for everybody. So I've got kids. I got 3 kids, and I want them to grow up in Ohio. I want them to be safe here. I want them to be able to get jobs here. I don't want them to have to move out of state, and I always want to protect their freedoms. And I want that for your families as well. So again, my name is Justice Dan Hawkins. I'm so proud to be your new Ohio Supreme Court Justice. I welcome any questions you have. Please sign my petition if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Hawkins for Ohio is my website. I'm told I have an Instagram page, but I don't know what the hell that is. So Instagram, something Hawkins, Justice Hawkins. I'm on there apparently, my teenager said. So, but please, any support you have, because we're going to see an unprecedented amount of money again, not only coming from out of state for my opponents, but we're going to see all this money come in. We got the governor's race, the Senate race, and we need to make sure we don't lose our eye off the ball for these judicial races and let these progressive liberals from out of state try to influence the state of Ohio and what our Constitution says and what our law says. So I welcome any questions you have. Again, I'm Dan Hawkins. Thank you so much again for your support, guys.
Great. Stay up here for a second, Dan. Great. Justice Dan Hawkins is going to stay and answer a couple questions. I know that Jeff Toring's got a question, and he's going to be coming up in a second, but I expect a few of you others to have been very paying attention significantly and have some great questions for Dan. But I actually have a couple. Now, most people know that have been here many times throughout the years that judicial candidates have a lot of rules that they can't talk about. They have a different way of being able to campaign. That gives us a great role as leaders of the party and as activists in the party to be able to say and do things that they can't say. But I'm still going to ask you to make you really uncomfortable to comment on this. So I appreciate the effort that you're undertaking to try to make a Buckeye be required on the state constitution. What is your opinion of Judge Zayas's opinion that a Michigan grad should be on the state constitution? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, geez. I tell you, there's one justice who is a Michigan grad on there. He won't admit it. But yeah, I'm going to try to do our best. Let's keep that out of the Constitution. I think Ohio State, though, must be represented for sure. I mean, for gosh sake. We have Cincinnati. We got a Harvard guy and a Michigan guy. But before my election, we didn't have anyone from Ohio State, which is, I think, is just a total miscarriage of justice. So let's keep it going.
As you can tell, a very talented justice who completely ignored my question and did not even talk about how Judge Zayas wants to put a Michigan grad on the Supreme Court. But yeah, I will not be offended by that. So with that, before we take our first question, I do have one question for you, Dan, because I think it's an interesting topic that most of us care about, and I know it's something you can talk about. We're experiencing an unprecedented level of judicial overreach in this nation. In the year of 2025, we had more instances of nationwide injunctions, thank you. We had, in 24, 23, 22, you had activist jurists that were going after a previous elected official and a nominee of a party. There's so many instances we have. What controls are in place in the state of Ohio that would prevent that from happening? And for that matter, I'm interested in your commentary and your position on what's happening in the nation on that topic.
Yeah, sure. It's really something that's shocking. We really haven't seen before in our nation's history. Usually, when parties come to court and they ask for an injunction is basically an order that says we want so-and-so to stop doing something, or we want the court to order someone to start doing something. But usually for those injunctions, it just has to do with the parties that are there in court. You know, I sue Shannon, say, Shannon, I want you to stop doing something. And usually those orders are just between me and Shannon, the parties in the courtroom. But what we've seen is just this really complete, I don't know the basis in law of it, but we've seen judges, at least on the federal district, not only ruling it based on the parties in their courtroom or just in their jurisdiction, they're saying this rule applies to everywhere in the country. Now, the U.S. Supreme Court has shot some of that down recently, and they've done a piecemeal here and there based on the cases. So this United States Supreme Court has pushed back about a lot of that stuff. But part of this is part of this is a strategy by the other side, right? It's to delay and make the Trump administration defend these things in case after case. It's a delay tactic, and it's unfortunate. So at least on the federal level, I don't practice in federal court, I don't control federal courts, but the U.S. Supreme Court has shot back at that. Here in the state of Ohio, we do have a statutory restrictions on when judges can do that. There are specific situations where judges that's lay out that judges can't do that. We've got a case pending in front of our court involving this issue, so I won't delve in how that's going to turn out, obviously. But at least the state, we do have a little bit more control over how those injunctions go for statewide. Doesn't stop judges here and there from issuing them, but as it goes through the appellate process, that's why courts of appeals and Ohio Supreme Court, these races are important to correct any errors from the trial court. But I think it's important because judges are supposed to find if there is an obviously a situation where the government has overstepped or somebody's overstepped a rule, a law, a statute should be ruled unconstitutional. That's fine. It's a judge's job. But there are those situations where judges need to understand that we have a limited role, that we need to have a respect for separation of powers. That judges, we might not like a particular piece of legislation, but we can't just say everything's unconstitutional because we don't like it. There's this law, there's this rule, there's this notion in place that every law that the legislature passes, it's presumed constitutional. So for a judge to rule something unconstitutional, they have to find basically beyond a reasonable doubt that yes, that statute or that situation is unconstitutional. It's a very high burden. Unfortunately, some judges don't really make it that burden. So.
Hey, Dan. So 2 quick questions for you. First of all, what do you think about the coincidence that a lot of Republicans that have been on the Supreme Court have been from Cincinnati, and most of the Democrats have been from Cleveland? Yeah. I want to know your thoughts on that. And then I wanted to know what your favorite line is from a published opinion this year.
Wow, okay.
That's a tough one, I know.
No, it is. Well, for the first question, it's funny. We have, 4 justices? 4 or 5, 4 from Cincinnati area. Of course, our Chief Justice from Butler County, Hamilton, Ohio. But yeah, the others, Dieters, Shanahan, DeWine, and Fisher, they're all from Cincinnati. So I was the Central Ohio, Westerville, Columbus area guy, which is a little bit unusual, but it was exciting. And then we have the Democrat judges who were defeated last year. They were both from Cleveland, right? Interesting. Like I set up here. Yeah, that's for sure. But right now we've got a court where, again, it's all Cincinnati. I'm the Central Ohio guy, and Justice Bruner is from, I think she says Columbiana County, more Central Ohio, but she claims Columbiana County is her home. It is definitely an interesting split. It's interesting in the sense that, and I'm not just saying this because I'm in Cleveland. I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan. I grew up Indians, Cavs, Browns, so I'm always battling against these Reds and Bengals down there with my colleagues. So, but favorite line from a decision. Gosh, I'm not ready for that one. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't know. That's a good question. I can't tell you right now. Thank you. You stumped me on that. I'm trying to think of one of my opinions, but some of mine have been boring so far. I haven't had any good zingers so far. But I'm going to have to chew on that and talk to you about it later. That's a good question, though.
Thanks for coming to visit with us commoners.
Yes,
we appreciate that, sir.
Please, no. Thank you.
Ideology is important, and philosophy is important for a judge. But I think that probably the most important is discernment, your gift of discernment on the bench. So my question to you is, how have you discerned the rigged 2020 election?
How have I discerned?
Do you think that it was rigged?
I think we see evidence more and more every day that there are some issues with the election, right? I think there was a report coming out of Georgia, right, a few months ago, how some hundreds of thousands of votes were, what they said, they were, they're inappropriately counted, right? I think there was definitely between the media and between some of the things that are being uncovered, especially with the COVID regulations that altered some of the election rules, which were completely illegal, and that's another reason why Supreme Courts are important. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court just flat out made up an election rule out of nowhere, which helped bring in many, many more votes for Joe Biden. So I'm always looking forward. As far as 2020 goes, there are clearly irregularities with him, but I tell you, I'm happy where we are now as a country and how President Trump has won and everything he's doing since then. And if anything, I think the other side's regretting winning in 2020 because of all the positive things we're seeing so far this year. So
The justice is right in that the leftists are coming for the Supreme Courts all over the country. In November, they threw in money and won 3 races in Pennsylvania. So they are coming for these jobs, even though we have control of the court right now. And this justice, right now we have no constitutional conservative judges in Franklin County. He was able to win in Franklin County. So that tells you about the respect that the people have for him to make the right decisions. Yes, sorry. How important is it for the courts to observe the Constitution in the effects that it has on the legislative branch and the executive branch, as to opposed to having a judicial system that's a wild card and you don't know where you're going to end up as a benefit to the state and the people of Ohio?
It's very important for predictability, right? We have a system of tripartite system of government, right? And it's up to the legislature to write the laws and make the laws. It's up to the court to resolve disputes that are in front of them. Of course, courts don't decide issues; we decide cases, and decide based on cases that are brought in front of us. And it's important for the stability of the state of Ohio. I mean, important for businesses. If you want to start a business, you need to understand the tax structure. You need to understand the rules and regulations. And if you're going to have random judges or justices change the rules on a whim, it's very hard to make a business plan moving forward. The courts, okay? You need, if you're a tri-court judge, you need to know, what is permissible when it comes to handling a particular case. And if a court of appeals or Supreme Court judge is going to change the rules on you at any time, maybe you're in the middle of a trial, in the middle of a sentencing hearing, I mean, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for attorneys, practicing attorneys. If you're writing a contract in a case, knowing that some judge isn't going to say, I don't like some of those words in the contract, I'm going to change them for you. I mean, these are important aspects. The judges have a very powerful tool, and we need to make sure we have judges and justices who understand that power and know when to wield it and when to not wield it, who understand how vital our separation of powers is in our country, and who also are also not afraid to stand up if the executive branch overreaches to stop that, or if the legislature passes laws that are clearly unconstitutional, to stand up and speak that as well. But again, there might be laws I don't necessarily agree with, but if they're in line with the Constitution, it's up to the legislature to change that law. It's not up to a court and a judge to change that law. That's how our system works. It's how it's supposed to work. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Everyone, Justice Dan Hawkins, appreciate you coming up and being with the Strongsville again, Dan. Thank you.